Hey everyone, my name is Yarrow and you're listening to the Rituals in Nature podcast. So I don't know if you noticed, but it is no longer Daydream Walls, and I'm quite excited about this new chapter, and I have more things to say about how that came to be and why, but for now I'll just say it feels true for me and also funny. I can never really pronounce Daydream Walls in a way that people really understand, and I think you are hearing me say this because you've seen it in writing, but actually when I have been speaking in other groups, I'm kind of like doing something funny with my mouth here and it's not really working, and it's kind of awkward if you want people to remember your podcast. And also, just to touch on this briefly, I think this year in the pandemic, but also since my accident and since I broke my leg, I think rituals in nature have become even more important to me. I mean, I wrote a whole book about this last year, if you remember. It's called Rituals, Simple and Radical Practices for Enchantment in Times of Crisis. And yeah, so in a way it makes sense to give this podcast a new name. And I think there will also be a new format in how I interview people from autumn. So I'm taking a break over the summer from doing new interviews. I have a few more to share with you, and then I'll do some solo episodes. And then in the autumn, I will return to speaking to wonderful people, but maybe in a slightly different way. And I'm not really sure what that looks like yet, but I'm looking forward to finding out. So, anyway, today I spoke to the wonderful Meghan Norean, who has so much beauty to share about what it means to live in a body that has a cycle or a rhythm that doesn't fit into capitalist society. So we talked about the beauty of really listening to our bodies and trauma-informed somatics and movement as a way to be in the world but also process what's happening right now. So I really hope that you enjoy this interview as much as I did, and that you feel some comfort and inspiration. Meghan is so wonderful. I'm grateful to have done this interview. A few updates from me. I think something I just feel called to say is that if you are feeling nervous or confused about the world opening back up, then you're definitely not alone. And if you're excited about the world opening or picking up speed and this works for you, there's no shame or judgment in that either. That's cool, but I think I almost like have seen conversations in secret around me of like, oh my god, this is overwhelming. And then other people were like, yeah, been feeling that too, but I didn't really say. And I just want you to know I feel the same if that is how you feel. And things are opening up in the UK at the moment, but there's the Indian strain or mutation is spreading very fast, so there's a lot of kind of hesitation going back and forth, and my gut reaction at the moment is just to be so inside. I'm like so inside, and of course I miss humans, but I'm really kind of allowing myself to do this at my own pace in a way that feels safe to me, and also to remember, which ties in so beautifully with this episode, that there are outer and inner seasons, and that they are not always in the same rhythm or pace, and that's okay, right? So yeah, I'm having surgery again next month on my leg, which will mean that it's gonna set me back on the walking path. So I'm probably not gonna move very much this summer, and I'm trying to just think of it as another autumn, which is my favorite season. Another whole 3 months of being with candlelight and books and audiobooks, and having maybe some little fires in my garden that I can share with people I love, and yeah, just keeping it simple. That's kind of where I'm at. So if you're at that point, just know that I'm sending lots of love and solidarity to you. And other than that, in my other business, Yarrow Digital, I'm offering a free virtual business summer retreat. That's a very long name, but I think it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be the 24th and 25th of July, and I'm offering free workshops over the weekend, little meditation and journaling sessions, little getting to know each other's, and then we'll do some co-working. And if you have a creative project or a business that you're working on, or maybe like a book or a zine that you're making, please come. I think this is going to be really great, and I know that some really amazing people have already signed up, and I think it's going to feel really nice to be together and kind of look into the future, because I think many of us have not had the capacity to do that in a way that felt nourishing in a while. And so I'm hoping to create an experience that feels just kind of gently uplifting and inspiring, and that we can maybe make some plans about the time ahead and what we want from it together. I'll link to that in the show notes. And then there's also on the 7th of June a free workshop coming up on branding. So if you're interested in that, come. I'm running free workshop every month again over in this other business, and I'm also going to send more separate newsletters. So in the past, I've often sent updates about both my businesses to everyone, but I'm going to send more frequent newsletters. I mean, not super frequent, maybe once or twice a month. But I'm going to separate that out a little bit more so that I don't overwhelm you and you're only hearing about things that you are really excited about. And so, yeah, if you want to hear about both my businesses, then make sure that you're on the Yarrow Digital newsletter as well. All right, that's all my updates. I'm going to let you listen now, and I'm so grateful you're here. So, yeah, thank you so much for tuning in.
Hey everyone. Gosh, I am really looking forward to this conversation. And I know I say this often, but it's just true. I have a wonderful guest today, and I have a bunch of really cool questions. I'm speaking to Meghan Norean, who is so many different things, but mostly a womb witch and a cyclical living guide. And as you know, cyclical living is something that's become really important to me over the last few years, both in my life, in my body, but also in my business and my creativity. And I know that this is something that many of you are thinking about as well. And I also think that the pandemic has kind of really put even more emphasis on the importance of being able to listen and be in tune with what's happening in the world around us in a sustainable and beautiful way. So, Meghan, thank you so much for making time. I'm really, really excited to talk to you.
Thanks, Yara. I'm really looking forward to this.
So, for those that don't know you, how would you describe your work and what are you generally excited about doing?
Yeah, great. So I call myself a cyclical living guide and a womb witch, which you have already mentioned. And basically, that means that I work with people who have menstrual cycles, and I help guide them to align their lives with the energies of their cycles. And I do this in a spiritual way, in an embodied way, and yeah, just to help people discover sustainable ways of living, which I think is so important in this, ever evolving, faster paced life that we live in now.
Yes.
Yeah, and what I'm excited about. I think right now, it's just some new things that are coming up for me is getting more training in trauma and trauma informed somatics and movement, and how that connects with the cycle. And I'm really excited to use the whole body and the movement of the body to really address trauma, and how we can use the menstrual cycle as um, the supportive practice to do that. And so that's something I'm really excited and exploring at the moment.
Me too. This next question is super casual, and feel free to take this any way you like. But I'm wondering what your experience of the pandemic has been like, and how it maybe has changed your work or your outlook on how you want to be in the world.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. And I think, like so many others, it sort of threw my world upside down. Um, just like my personal life, I was at the beginning of 2020, I was in a master's program living in Canada. And my spouse, who is from India, did not receive a visa to come and join me. And so we had plans to apply for his visa in April of 2020. And obviously that did not happen because of pandemic. And so that sort of changed our whole trajectory. And I decided to drop out of grad school and move back to India to be with him. And yeah, but like a beautiful thing that opened up because of that was that I got the time and the focus and the money I had saved up for grad school, I got to put into my business and go into my business full time this last October, I believe. And so that's been a really beautiful transition and something that I'm holding on to that came out of the pandemic, even though it was a really rough start there to the beginning of 2020. It turned out decently towards the end. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whew. Yeah, that's big. That's so many changes to go through and so many big decisions to make in a really short period of time. So well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I want to kind of dig deeper into the work that you do and what it does for people. And I wonder, as a starting point, if you can share something that you wish more people knew about their bodies and about cycles and about listening, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, I would love to share that. I just think about, the world we live in today and, the powers that are running the systems, the powers of capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, all of these powers are systems that were set up in a linear fashion because they were, designed for white men. And yeah, I think all of us who aren't white men, and specifically for those of us living in a a body that has a menstrual cycle, um yeah, it's very difficult because the rhythm of our cycle does not fit into society. And so my own personal story is that I went through continual cycles of burnout. I was just go, 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 push, push, push all the time. And then I would crash and I would have to, step away from everything I was doing for weeks and sometimes months. And at one point, there was a 2-year period of darkness. And so, um, what I really wish that all people, um, but specifically those who have cyclical bodies, knew is that we don't need to try and force ourselves to fit into the systems because they weren't designed for us. So how can we together create and imagine new systems that are supportive for our bodies and our energy? And that's really like where my passion and my drive goes to, so that we can really heal from these stories that we have been told our whole life and really step into, yeah, this revolution. I like to call it the cyclical revolution because I really believe it is. That we are revolutionizing the way that we embody ourselves in the world. Hmm. Yeah, that just saying that gave me like tingles everywhere. So,
Oh my God, same over here. Yes. And I also feel like, oh gosh, I also feel that not you, I am also still scratching the surface of the potential for really radical shifts in that. And I can see that just exploring, just listening, just being curious, just being around people like you who do this work in much more depth has changed so much in my life and has just given me so much more ease and comfort and self acceptance and possibility and Oh gosh, this is mushy.
Mm.
I'm really feeling it.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. And also, what I really love about your work is that it's so inclusive in its language. And I know that for many years I kind of sort of maybe was curious, but was just kind of feeling no resonance with this high emphasis on fertility and being a fertility goddess, and just in, mm, really stereotypically feminine stuff, where I
Mm,
can also ask what that even is and what it means, but it just didn't really speak to me, and it was hard for a while to find a way in that felt true for me. And so I'm really happy to see that that's shifting, and that people are using more gender neutral language, and just not pairing those considerations with gender so much, I guess.
mm,
So yeah, I would love to hear if you have any tips for someone getting started who maybe feels nervous, because it can bring up a lot of stuff, of course, to listen to our
mm,
bodies, because they have stories to tell that maybe we haven't been, been telling ourselves or owning really. So,
mm.
so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, well, I think back to when I began cycle awareness. I guess that must have been 5, 6 years ago now. And what was recommended to me, and what I do recommend to people just starting out, is getting a cycle chart, or you can just do this in a journal as well. But if you want what I think is a really beautifully designed cycle chart, I have a free one available on my website that you can download. But in this cycle chart is writing down just like what day you are of your cycle, and writing down how you're feeling. And you can touch on the different aspects of your life, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, really whatever you want to write down. And if you can make an intention to do that for 3 cycles, to begin to see some of those ebbs and flows and the patterns that happen, because our cycle on a physiological level does work with our hormones, and so those really influence how we are feeling and how we are doing in the world. And so learning your own unique cycle, because um, that you can go on so many Google searches, or through Pinterest, or reading books, podcasts, whatever it is, and trying to discover, what your body is telling you. But ultimately, your body is the one that's going to give you the answers. And so the only way you can learn that language is by asking yourself, and yeah, turning that awareness inward. And I would say, if anybody is having struggles with that process, and really turning in and seeking what's happening, finding a container to do that with other people, or with one person, might be beneficial, to hold that space. And having someone be particularly trauma informed, or somebody that is informed with how to yeah, help you walk through some of those revelations you might get from working with your body, which, yeah, some of them can be quite difficult. And so, yeah, that's like what I'm hoping to do for people, is like holding that space, that they, yeah, feel comfortable, and to explore all that is within them.
Yes. 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 Yeah. So much agreement here and resonance. And I so agree. Like, there's so much power in just making the commitment and finding a container to just listen to your body and really observe over a few cycles is so powerful. And it's free, which is really amazing. It can really make such a big difference. And then there's people like you who can support deeper work, which is also really beautiful. I I used to really struggle with like a super intense post ovulation crash, and
Mm.
before I was really listening to my body, I was thinking this was PMS. And I talked to my GP a few times, and I was always told, well, you can go on a pill, but that's kind of really all we can do for you. And it's so, God, it's so frustrating to be in that loop of knowing something really isn't right and I'm in pain and doesn't feel good, but also no one is really listening in a way. And I don't in any way want to say that there's been like a magic fix or overnight everything got better, but just for me to understand that when I track my cycle, I actually notice it's not right before my period. The most tricky part in my cycle is after I ovulate, and thinking about why that might be, and also allowing myself to be a bit out there and woo woo and thinking about not just the hormones and the chemical processes going on in my body, but thinking about the bigger picture of what it means to shift out of this outward expressive period in my cycle to kind of go more into autumn. And like, how is the world responding to me doing that? Not always positively, like we are expected to be fertile and productive all the time, and might that kind of impact how I feel about this time in my cycle? That was a long waffle. What I was trying to say was what I was trying to say really is just to illustrate and ground this idea a little bit of like how magical just cycling and just tracking and listening to a cycles can be. And so yeah, really highly recommend people check your chart out and print that off and just give it a go. It's so beautiful and so transformative. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, can I just tag on there a little bit?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so what I was saying earlier about, society not being set up for us in cyclical bodies, it shows up all over the place in the autumn and the winter. So in our premenstrual and our menstrual phase, because society expects us to be those spring and summer people that are always outward and going. And so a lot of like PMS signs and things like that are just because, the society is not, it's not set up for us. And so then we are, deemed, the bitch, is one that I get often in my inner autumn. But that's just because in my inner autumn I am connected to my truth and I speak it, and that shouldn't be that shouldn't be invaluable in society. Like, we should value those honest truth speakers. And yeah, and not to say there is PMDD, which is a real thing, but a lot of these sort of premenstrual um, labels that get put on us are basically because in that time we're more connected to our cyclical body and not to a linear structure outside of us. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think also what I love in what you're saying is that it can totally be both. Like the label can really work to get access
Mm.
to certain things or just to kind of like get an overview and an understanding, and maybe also to talk to other people and connect with other people who have similar experiences. And then there can be a coexisting other dimension of also looking into the psycho-spiritual aspects of why this might be happening on a physical level. So yeah, that's so
Mm.
good. So good. Whew. Yeah, so you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I would love to hear more if you have more to share on what you think the costs are of not listening to these things and not prioritizing that.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the big one for me, because it's my own personal experience, was these cycles of burnout that I was on, and really like looking outside of myself all of my answers. And that was, yeah, I don't even know like who I was 8, 9, 10 years ago, when I was within a conservative Christian community. And I, one that pretty much condemned things like dancing or any sexual expression outside of, a very heterosexual marriage and things like that. And I was so disconnected from my body and what it needed and what it valued, and looking outside for everything. I didn't have a voice. I shut down my voice, and I didn't speak up and say anything if I felt uncomfortable, or when I knew things weren't right. And yeah, I just really felt disconnected from my personal power. And I think that is a cost for anybody who is not living in an embodied way, is that we let our personal power go to something outside of ourselves. And coming to my menstrual cycle was my path back to my personal power, and why I'm doing this work, because it became such a transformative journey for me, coming back into my body and realizing that I do have a voice and my feelings do matter. And I even went through a 2-year period where I was having physical symptoms and signs in my body, from chronic fatigue and digestive issues. And for 2 years I did not go to the doctor because I was not listening to what was happening. And when I finally did, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder that I had for 2 years, that I just was living with. And it got to the point where it was at not the severest level, but the next one down, because I was not listening to my body. And so not only, the physical implications of not listening to what our body is telling us, but, also being disconnected from our power. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. It also makes me think about how we've become, or like how much stress we think is acceptable, right? Like,
Mm.
I think our bodies are giving us all these signs for what isn't right. And like the 5-day, 40-hour work week is like a big no for most bodies,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
yet we totally accept that it's normal to crash when you're getting home, and to really only be able to sit down on a sofa and watch TV, and that will be the day basically. And I think it makes me really sad that that has become so normalized. And it's not even, actually, if we really wanted to look at productivity in terms of output, it's not even effective, because that isn't good output, right? That's
Mm.
just
Mm.
that's just awful. It's just
Yes.
awful. Yeah. um I'm sure that there are so many people listening right now feeling really inspired and wanting to find their own way into this work. And I wonder if you have any thoughts or ideas on how it can be made more inclusive, both from practitioners, but also maybe from people who are exploring this and want to get started.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think I think talking about inclusivity, I think on a whole, which you touched on earlier, those of us who are working in the field with menstrual cycles, really adopting gender inclusive language is sort of like the bare minimum at the moment, and realizing the spectrum of people that have periods that are in cycling bodies is like vast. And um, being able to do that and bringing in the language is a huge thing. That I'm seeing small shifts happening in that, but there is still a large community that attach periods to women. And I'm sure most of us um, saw that with J.K. Rowling's is sort of the poster for that. I think that's sort of like, yeah, we need to be creative and find new ways to talk about our bodies, because there is this beautiful constellation of all of these different expressions. And so that's one piece that, yeah, just detaching from the word period. And, I often like to say, which a lot of us are saying now, but not all women have periods, and not all who have periods are women. And so that's something to be adopted, to be inclusive. And I also think, in society, what I was talking about, that if there is a way for workplaces, people who are at work from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, that if there is a way that we can bring cycle awareness into the workplace, I think that would revolutionize the ideas we have about the stress we're putting on our bodies and the productivity, the things that we need to do, and realizing that when cyclical bodies work with their cycle, they're actually way more productive than when we're working against it. And so how to bring that cycle awareness into the workday. But even for people who are in a job and their workplace is not willing to do any of that, or there's no sign of that, I think just being able to be aware yourself, and not only brings a lot more self-compassion for those days that are really tough, and also creating space that you can carve out small bits here and there of self-care that is aligned to your cycle, will make your own life just a little bit more sustainable, even if the rest of the world is not supporting you in that. Yeah, so I think like just the small changes that we can make, or and especially getting in touch with the small changes of coming in to know our body can have yeah, can allow the expansiveness of expression and care that we can give to ourselves.
Yeah. And I really enjoy the way that you talk about productivity, because I think this past year especially, there's been this funny dance for me where in a way often I'm just rejecting the whole idea of productivity and thinking about my output, and I'm just like, I'm just over here going with the flow, doing what I've committed to do. But also, of course, actually it's really beautiful and satisfying to get shit done and to feel that I have committed in realistic ways, and I'm showing up for what I've said yes to, and it feels good. And I think, yeah, there's a real reclamation process happening, I guess. And I wonder if you have more to share around how we really can become so much more creative when we listen to our bodies and live more cyclically.
Yeah, so creativity and the cycle is one of my favorites, because they mirror each other. The creativity also goes in a cycle, and if we think about it, that the beginning of any creation starts with a vision, and then it moves into this sort of um, intention, initial phases, that spark where you're just getting started, you're making a plan, and then it moves into doing the work, getting things done, and then it goes to this editing feedback where you're reflecting back on the work you did, and then it moves into you gotta let your creation go, let it fly on its own, and step back from it. And that's exactly how the cycle is moving. In the winter of the cycle is the time of visioning. So if we can give ourselves a little more space to rest, um, you'll realize that you will receive those visions because there's not as much outside noise going on. And then moving into spring is sort of that playful, curious stage where you can like plan and yeah, try out different things, see what's working. And then moving into the summer is really the time of realizing those visions and allowing your creations to come to life and getting that work done. And then moving into the autumn is the reflection time and looking back and turning back inwards and allowing the edits and the feedback to come. And then back to the winter again, you have to surrender your work to come back into rest. And so um yeah, when you begin to work with your cycle, you start to see all of those powers of the cycle and how they can really support your creativity and any creations that you're putting out into the world. And it's really revolutionized the way that I do business as well, because I really do take the time out in winter to rest and receive lots of visions and take the time to really plan out how I want my creations to flow with my cycle in business. And that's been like a really amazing process for me to live a little bit more sustainable and hopefully avoid more cycles of burnout in the future.
Yes, I so want that for myself and you and everyone.
Yes.
We covered so much beautiful ground, Megan. I wonder if there's anything else you would like to talk about that maybe I haven't asked about yet.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean nothing's really coming to me at the moment. I'm just so grateful for this conversation and for any of the listening ears that are listening into this.
Me too, me too. And I just love this mental image of all these little ears out there in the world, a bit like little mushrooms popping up, like. And I'm one of these ears all the time. I'm such a heavy podcast listener, and I love this medium so much. It's just such a joy to have conversations like this, especially now that I'm not on social media anymore, and I feel like I have more capacity. So, yeah, this is great. Um, Megan, let us know what you're currently offering and where people can find you.
Yeah, definitely. So my website is just my name, meghannorean.com. And one of the favorite things about my work is gathering a community of cyclical beings and creating cycle magic and the revolution together. So we are just getting ready to open the doors for the summer session of the Sacred Cycles Coven. And it's a really beautiful community where we have circle gatherings and tarot readings and movement practices and meditations. And it's all revolving around the cycles of the womb and of the earth. So it's a really beautiful community, and you can find that on my website at meghannorean.com.
Yeah, thank you. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. And I just want to add one last piece. I feel like as you were mentioning the earth just now, I was like, yeah, we haven't really talked about the earth yet, but that's so important. And something I really love about this work as well is that it makes my wish for activism around climate change and ecology and social justice a bit more tangible in a way, because I'm holding, of course, like so many of us, a lot of anxiety around, ah, what are we doing? Oh my God. And I think there's a lot that we can do intellectually, and that's important as well. And then there's social aspects and, um, psychological ones. But then there's also the body, and really beginning to understand that everything that we're doing to this planet, we are also doing to our bodies, because we're so interconnected. And I don't think that I would have understood that really without practitioners like you, you know?
Mm.
And it's wild how hard this is to understand as a human at this time and age. That breaks my heart.
Yeah, I often see it go one way or the other with people. Either people are really connected to the earth, they're really connected, to the activism of climate change and working with seasons of the earth, and then they sort of awaken to their body as being, oh, mirroring these cycles. Or like me, my personal story was I came into the work with my body and understanding it as, cyclical, and realizing, oh, the earth is doing the same thing. And it was before that, it was an intellectual understanding that, like, oh yeah, I know there's seasons, oh yeah, I know the earth does, certain things in different seasons. But once I understood it in my body, and then I can look at the earth and be like, oh my, like, be so amazed at how, like, the maple tree, like, the sap goes down to the roots in the winter to rest, and then it comes back up to the branches during the spring and summer, and that just, like, blows my mind. And then the autumn, when it's going back down, the leaves turn color and they fall off, and it's just like, whoa, like, that's so beautiful. And then realizing that, like, I am so connected with this maple tree. Obviously, I want it to thrive, and I want it to be on this earth for many, many more years. And so, yeah, I definitely hope that one way or the other, people are awakening to that connection, because I think it's so important for us as humans in bodies, and important for us as humans living on this planet. Mm.
Yes, this is such a beautiful thought to end with. Megan, thank you so much. I loved what you just said and what you said overall, and I'm really excited to share this. And yeah, I'm excited for all these little ears out there listening. And just to see your work unfold and to have you in the embodied business community is really wonderful. So thank you so much. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yarrow. I was really grateful for the work you're doing in the world.